How's it going, Starseekers? I hope you're having a good day and welcome back to the channel, where today I'm bringing you a review on a game called Hike. No, not a short hike, which I hear is a pretty decent game. No, this game is just called Hike, and while it is actually a very short hike, this game is far from decent, and in fact I'd go so far as saying that this is one of the worst games that I've played this year. Hike is a walking simulator where the geezer that you're playing as has decided to take a break, hike up into the wilderness and camp out for a few days, exploring his surroundings and taking in the beauty of nature. But let me tell you now, the game is far from beautiful and I don't recommend you buy Hike. Now, instead of a standard review, I'm going to be walking you through the entirety of my hike to save you wasting your time, a few pennies and a lot of frustration. So sit back, relax and let's get hiking. So we begin our journey in Hike by the side of a road in the middle of nowhere. The controls are explained to us, which basically consist of moving your character with the left thumbstick, looking around with the right, and holding ZL or ZR to sprint, though our sprint is barely faster than our walk. Now right away I noticed that the frame rate wasn't great in the game despite the low quality textures, and after finding invisible walls blocking my way, I was instead ushered past my yellow car, remember that, yellow, and down a narrow passageway marked by a do not enter sign. Beyond this I found a small footbridge over a dried out stream bed, and continuing onward I hit a loading screen which announced that I'd been walking for hours before I'd found an area of my liking. Now by this time it was apparently getting very late and I was prompted to find an open spot to set up camp. I even wrote a little note to remind myself, which was actually a good thing, since this area was pretty large and it took me about 10 minutes just to find my designated camping spot due to everything looking the same and there being no defining features. Now I say no defining features, but this isn't entirely true. There was this wooden shack that I found which had a well hidden inside this massive magical rock which I was able to walk straight through. There was also this other rock which a tree was playing hide and seek inside of, and a large log blocking this passageway. Anyway, I eventually found the camping spot and pitched my tent, but unfortunately I'd forgot my firewood and had to go find some. Now, considering I'd chosen to camp in an area surrounded by 1,000 trees, you'd think that firewood would not be much of an issue, but I simply could not bring myself to snap a few branches off the local foliage. Instead, I spent another 10 minutes wandering through the wilderness before I happened upon a bounty of neatly stacked logs, which I promptly pilfered. And after spending another 5 minutes trying to find my way back to camp again, I used them to get a roaring fire on the go before settling in for the night. Now day 2 is where the real adventure began, and I decided to explore the forest for a while. Misfortune struck once more however, as the log that I'd encountered on the previous day barred my way, and at a towering height of 2 feet it proved impossible to scale. Well, one thing I learned as a child was that if you can't go over it and you can't go under it, then you'll have to go through it, and so I set off in search of an axe, wondering if perhaps the wooden shack might house one. Arriving back at the shack, I proceeded to the rear of the structure where I found a crowbar, which I then used to rip the shack's door clean off its hinges. Inside I found just what I was looking for, an axe, and while at first sight it appeared to be a somewhat flimsy tool, after making my way back to the log, in one swift strike I cleaved the wooden blockade atwain with such might that even the sun cowered in fear. I then slipped betwixt the two halves like some sort of ethereal god, and proceeded onward to the forest beyond. Now after some time had passed, it was getting late once more, but I stumbled across some kind of abandoned facility which I decided to explore further. It was surrounded by an impenetrable chain link fence which barred my entry, and a mysterious floating rock which defied all laws of physics prevented me from climbing over the fence. Well, it was time once more for me to find a tool to go through the fence, and as luck would have it, a building nearby offered up a set of conveniently placed cutters, which I used to effortlessly remove part of the fence, tossing it aside like a used Johnny. After exploring the area and marvelling at its well polished concrete, it was time for a spot of parkour, though I'd literally only just learned how to jump, and even scaling small objects proved a bit of a challenge. Fucking shitty collision detection. Eventually I found my rhythm though and clambered my way through shipping containers, over gas tanks and across precariously balanced planks, eventually finding a doorway which led into the facility, or so I thought, because upon entering I found myself atop a cliff which looked upon what appeared to be a dried lake bed, though in the Steam screenshots it actually appears to have water in it. The view was magnificent, but dark ominous clouds loomed overhead and I thought it best to head back to camp. I did however do this rather slowly as I'd completely forgotten how to run. Now by the time I'd made my way back to the area which contained my camping spot, the skies had opened, and as I made my way through a mysterious purple fog which had settled on the area, magical fairy dust rained down all around me. Navigating through the fog proved very challenging indeed, and it took me a whole 10 minutes to actually find my camp, after which I retreated into my tent to wait out the storm until morning. Day 3 had arrived, and with it another glorious morning which promised fun and adventure, but alas it was time to head back to the car and back to my miserable life. Not bothering to pack up my shit, I headed off in search of the route that I'd used to enter this wonderful wilderness, but to my horror, that tree bastard had called in his big brother who now barred my escape. There had to be another way out of here though, and after about 10 minutes of searching, during which I spotted another gravity-defying rock, I eventually found an alternate route out of the area, back to the wooden footbridge over which I crossed, relieved to be heading home at last. I was glad to see that my beaut of a car hadn't been stolen during my hike, but I was not impressed to find that in my absence some bastard had painted it orange. Oh well, could have been worse I thought, and started the engine before setting off on my long journey home. And so that is where my hike ended. The whole journey took about 30 minutes to complete, with the majority of that spent wandering aimlessly through trees trying to find my way, and what I just covered is the entirety of the game. When it comes to replayability, there's none, and I mean that quite literally, as once you've completed the game you can't actually start a new one, and the only option that you have is to continue, which takes you to the area just before you get in your car and head home. Now overall hike is pretty dreadful. While the eShop screenshots make the game appear quite visually stunning, after a quick comparison it's clear that these aren't taken from the Switch release of the game, and I for one am sick and tired of developers and publishers falsely advertising games in this way. Audio wise, while the game also advertises a soundscape designed to be calm and nice for the ears, there's actually very little in the way of sound effects bar the crunching of your footsteps, and the music, which consists of randomly selected adventure game type music, drowns out any sort of ambience the game might have had. There's also no game options to adjust these sound levels. When it comes down to it, Hike is just another cash grab, its eShop listing is complete bullshit, and for a rating, today for the first time in a while, I'm going to be busting out the shovelware stamp of approval, which certifies Hike as shovelware shite, which should be avoided at all costs. If you want to experience the game for yourself, then you can pick it up from the UK Switch eShop for £4.49, or from the US eShop for $4.99. Alternatively, the game's also available on Steam. Well, that about wraps up this review of Hike. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it more than the game itself, comment down below with your thoughts and opinions on it, and don't forget to subscribe as I publish new Switch game reviews every few days. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.